Hello, I am Dr. Jigare Pancha, an occupational therapist. So this is the continuation of the humerus fracture, the part 2. So today in the humerus shaft fracture is part 2 of this lecture. So if you say this, just to brush up, that there are certain peculiarities of the humerus shaft fracture that is next to clavicle. Again, this is the second most common fractures, bird fractures basically. We have discussed certain advantages and disadvantages. That is the advantage basically it's not advantage, you can say that it's the good things which uh, which are there even if you have fracture because of the humerus location basically. So incidence of compound fracture is low over here. Thick muscles ensure rich periosteal blood supply, hence features are invariably unite. So I mean the fractures invariably unite. Also, the malunion remains concealed within thick musculature, so no cosmetic abnormality is seen though, and conceals shortening of the humerus, if any. Further, in the disadvantage, you have a wide displacement occurs. If it is, then wide displacement increases the rate of malunion, and soft tissue interposition may occur, causing non-union. So, and this is just to brush up the things of the previous classes and the previous thing, and also the anatomical consideration with this, because if you say that the muscles of the upper arm influence the deformity, the meaning is that if the fracture is between the pectoralis major and the deltoid, so the posterior fragment is adducted by the pectoralis major and teres minor and latissimus dorsi, while the distal fragment is pulled upwards by the deltoid. So, and also, if the fracture is below the insertion of the deltoid, the proximal fragment is abducted by the deltoid while the coracobrachialis, biceps, and triceps pull the distal fragment upward. Also, if you say that the gravitational forces which provide neutral traction force also may overdo it, causing distraction and non-union. So the muscle reduce the incidence of compound fractures, but produce all varieties of displacement in the common simple fractures. Also, the radial nerve injury is very common in this type of fracture because it can occur before reduction or sometimes even after close reduction due to getting it because it gets trapped between the fracture fragments. And this is the only fracture in the body where which is known to show this peculiarity. And also the mechanisms which I have discussed before, that is direct, indirect force, and birth injuries. Direct injuries can be transverse or comminuted fracture, whereas indirect may be due to outstretched hand, fall basically. The fractures can be oblique or spiral in indirect forces, and in birth, which is the second most common birth fracture after the clavicle. We have discussed certain clinical features that of the that it shows all the features of a fracture, and the careful neurological and vascular examination is important. Other injury to the radial nerve is common, as I mentioned. In spiral groove or lower one third of the humerus, basically at that side, this radial nerve injury is very common. So, before going into the topic, just to brief you up that the cause of the humerus fracture, as I mentioned, is physical trauma such as fall. So, other causes also are there, such as conditions like cancer in the bone. This can have certain types. That is, types include proximal humerus fracture, humeral shaft fracture, and distal humeral fractures. So here the diagnosis can be is generally confirmed by X-ray, even if a CT scan may be done in proximal fractures to gather further details. Also, there are certain treatment options which may include a sling, splint, brace, or surgery. So, in proximal fractures that remain well aligned, a sling is often sufficient. But if you say there are many humeral shaft fractures where you say which may be treated with the help of a brace rather than a surgery. So, surgical options may include open reduction internal fixation ORIF, which is known to be, and close reduction and percutaneous pinning, and intramedullary nailing, joint replacement may be another options. So proximal and shaft fractures generally have a good outcome, while outcomes with distal fractures can be less good. So they represent about 4% of the fractures. And the symptoms basically are so a humerus fracture has an immediate pain, enduring, and exacerbated with the slightest movement. So the affected region swells, with bruising appearing a day or two after the fracture. So the fracture is typically accompanied by a discoloration of the skin. At the site of the fracture, a crackling or rattling sound may also be present, may be caused by the humeral fracture of the humerus pressing against itself. So that sounds you can also hear. And also nerve as affected as I mentioned. So loss of control or sensation in the arm below the fracture site can be seen. You can see the wrist drop basically because of the radial nerve. Then if the fracture affects the blood supply, then the patient will have a diminished pulse at the wrist. Displaced fracture of the humerus shaft will often cause deformity, a shortening of length of upper arm. Then the distal fracture may also cause deformity, and they typically limit the ability to flex the elbow. And so these are certain issues, but there are certain causes. Say humeral fracture occurs physical trauma, as I mentioned, but in we can say in three parts, that is proximal, middle, and distal. So in proximal humerus fracture, the most often occur among elderly people with osteoporosis who fall on outstretched arm. So less frequently proximal fractures occur from more of a motor vehicle accidents or gunshot. Maybe you're going on the bike, you hit with another adjacent vehicle, and you fall straight away on the shoulder. So in that case also you have a humerus fracture with the proximal area. Gunshots injury or violent muscle contractions from an electric shock or seizure. Other risks may be like a low bone mineral density, impaired vision or balance, tobacco smoking. So stress of a fracture proximal and shaft regions can occur after excessive movement of throwing, such as pitching in a uh, game, or any very forceful activity of a uh, shoulder. In middle fractures also maybe because of physical trauma or falls, in which the shaft tends to produce a transverse fractures, whereas falls tend to produce a spiral fractures. Okay, so the physical trauma of the humerus shaft will cause you a transverse fracture, that is in a half, and further if someone falls, then it causes a rotation. So because of the rotation, the person can have a spiral fractures. Also, metastatic breast cancer may also cause fractures in the humerus shaft. Long spiral fractures of the shaft can are present in children with which may indicate physical abuse. Also, distal humerus fracture usually occur as a result of a physical trauma to the elbow region. If the elbow is bent during the trauma, then the olecranon is driven upward, producing the T or Y-shaped fracture or displacing one of the condyles. So these are certain areas with which it is formed in such a way. So also let's go for the investigation how it is done. So radiographs is are taken. So here I presented the image of humerus fracture radiographic image. So if you say the radiography of the entire arm, upper arm, including both the shoulder joint above and the elbow joint below, should be taken. So it helps to study the level of the pattern of the fracture. Also, there are certain treatment methods. So conservative methods, this consists of a splinting of the fracture. Just I like to tell more about the uh, radiographs, that the definitive diagnosis of the humerus fracture is typically made through a radiographic imaging. So for proximal fractures, X-ray can be taken from the scapula anterior posterior view. It takes an image of the front of the shoulder region from an angle. Also a scapular Y view, which takes an image of the back of the shoulder region from an angle, and an axillary lateral view, so which has the patient lie on his back, lift the bottom half of the arm up to the side, and have any mistake in the axillary region underneath the shoulder. So this helps to also to give you a perfect image and the area of the fracture sites. Also, CT scan can provide greater detail of the fracture. So non-displaced fracture may not be directly visible, but they may only be visible due to fat being displaced because of the internal bleeding of the elbow. So that's how the images can be uh, differentiated. In the classification, as I mentioned, this helps to uh, classify the condition in very individual manner. So because the fractures are classified on the base of location of the fracture and then the type of the fracture. So there are only three locations I mentioned: the proximal location, which is the top of the humerus near the shoulder; in the middle you have shaft of the humerus, which the topic is; and the distal location, which is the bottom of the humerus near the elbow. So okay, near the shoulder, near the elbow, and the middle is the in the middle region. So proximal fractures are also classified into four types, that is based on the displacement, that is greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, surgical neck, and anatomical structures. So which are the four parts of the humerus of the proximal humerus fracture? With the fracture displace being defined as at least 1 centimeter separation or an angulation greater than 45 degrees. Okay, 1 centimeter separation, that is displaced, or an angulation of more than 45 degrees. So further, let's go back to the treatment. That here the treatment consists of a splinting of the fracture if it is undisplaced. In displaced fracture, splinting is done after the close reduction, preferably under the means proper alignment and examination. As you can see in the image over here, that how the reduction is made and the U slab is placed to enable a proper positioning and posture of the humerus, which is very much indicated and ideal for the particular thing. So also we see that the conservative methods. Also let's further discuss about the splinting, simple splinting birth fractures and further. So here if you see that the simple splint in birth fractures, so the simple sling may be sufficient in young children. So the hanging cast, if you see in this image over here, A, that is hanging cast, so is useful in older children and adolescents because it is very easy to don and off, and also to have a good functional outcome in it. See, because in older children, in adolescence, it is easy for them to maneuver and to do in their functional tasks, because we as a therapist will help the individual not only to recover in his condition, but also to maintain the appropriate functional level of his functioning, and also to perform in a normal community. This having this kind of cast and sling, it is helpful for the individual even to travel and to maneuver other things, easy to don and off the shirt basically. In this to wear a shirt is much easier compared to a t-shirt, or a coat is easier. So like this in his ADL, we can help the individual to perform certain tasks. Also, so it is useful in older children and adolescents. So here the gravity aids in reduction of the fracture, as you see here. So they are not suitable if the level of the fracture corresponds to the upper limit of the cast. So because of the deforming effect of the proximal end of the cast, this is possible. And also it is indicated in a comminuted fracture of the distal third. If the cast is too heavy, it may, you can say, it may cause an distraction and consequent delay or non-union. So here it is very important to make a cast, because this is a permanent cast. If you see here, it has a L shape, so it is not possible for an individual to remove and put it back. So because of the certain shape and arrangement, this particular cast is formed. This gives a complete non-displacement of the limb, and because of that, the healing is assisted. So there are no another factors which are responsible for. It means there are no another factor present which are responsible for the uh, delay union or non-union, because any kind of mechanical forces are also such possible. So that's why, as I mentioned, so it is, if the cast is too heavy, it may cause destruction and subsequent delay or non-use. It should not be that heavy also. And also, the deforming effect of the proximal end of the cast to be seen, because it should not cause a certain displacement of the particular fracture site. Then you have a plaster U splint, that is co-aptation splint. So this U shape, if you see in the image B, U slab basically, so is sufficient in most of the situations of fracture of the proximal and the middle third of the portion of the humerus, and that's how it is helpful in that particular form. This also gives a complete coverage of the arm, and here you see there is no movement of the fractured site and the areas, as compared to the linear and as well as in the transverse displacement. So these both the movement and other displacements, extra displacements, are being controlled, and because of that control effect, the the healing is much in a very much in a time limit. Further, you have functional cast brace, that is Sarmiento is also known like this. So here is a functional cast brace. So basically, this uses the muscular force to both reduce and retain the fracture. Okay, so muscular force is used to both reduce and retain the fracture. So this is now replacing all other modalities of conservative treatment and is merging as the gold standard of non-operative methods, because it is very easy, and here there is no case of any kind of opening or fracture or any other certain. So the all other modalities of conservative treatment is an emerging as a gold standard, as I mentioned. So of a non-operative method, because this is a very easy and convenient method compared to the other one, because there is the operative procedures are always different from the conservative one. So that also, and also the patient uh, generally prefers that way, and even the doctors as well, because that is much easier and less tedious compared to the other procedures. Also, the fact is that the hanging cast, let me tell you that the hanging cast was described by Caldwell, and the weight should not be exceed more than 2 pounds. Okay, so that is another thing. Means it should be just in Indian standards should be just 1 kg. So that is what the ideal cast should be. So that's why even in nowadays, so a thermoplastic, low temperature thermoplastic splints which we make are used in this kind of casting, and it also helps for further management. And as you see here that I have mentioned the image of the individual. There is a patient for which this cast is formed. This is made up of low temperature thermoplastic. It is very light, means the whole weight of this cast won't even be more than 300 to 400 grams. So this will so here this the plastic which you are seeing in this picture on the right side the patient is wearing. So this is of around 2.4 mm thickness, as we have to cover the arm. So it doesn't require much. Even you can use 1.6 mm of thickness if it is a very if it's a chronic condition. Basically, in an acute condition, you can use a thicker material, maybe of 3.2 to 2.4 to 3.2. So even but the contour also plays a role in providing the strength to the splint. So that is also very important. So you can just select the material as per the need, but 2.4 is ideal at these conditions. So here you just take the circumference of the arm, and then you cut the material evenly, and also take the length, and then you have to take a certain component of overlap, as we have seen here, because if it is just means tip to tip, then it may have an impingement of the skin or underneath, and that can cause a certain bruises or even the little redness at the particular edges. So that is to be avoided by taking a little overlap size from the circumference. We can take 1 inch overlap or even half inch, because when you take a mold, so you put this plastic in a hot pan with a net in it, and then this white color plastic gets converted into purely transparent. Then you can take in a cold water, and then you can just apply on the individual's arm. Before applying to the arm directly, you can see the stockinette also, which is wearing in the forearm. That stockinette you have to apply on the arm first, and after you can take a mold, so that it fits well, and it has a proper grooves and arches and all curves which are necessary. As you can see in the armpit, that is a curve over here which is given to accommodate the contour. And also at the olecranon and the elbow joint, so it should not do cause any kind of impingement. You can give the particular curves. You can even mark at that particular point, and you can cut it, and after you can deburr it, or even with the heat gun you can smoothen the edges, so it won't be it won't be hurting the individual, and will be very much friendly to the skin, the particularly the edges. Otherwise the material is well enough for the individual. So like that you can give a straps, and then the patient can adjust the tightness as much as he wants and recommended. So like that you can pull the straps, and you can tighten or loosen it at any particular form. Here there are 3 steps to give it proximal, middle and distal adjustment and fitting area, so it fits well in a very appropriate manner. So this is a very convenient method at this point. The casts brace, or this with the help of a thermoplastic splint, so it is very easy for the individual to wear and take off. Even the person can take bath and he can apply. This is very convenient mode and easy to don and off. It is better to wear under the stockinette, because this is a non-perforated material, so in that there are chances of having of perspiration beneath, and that can cause the little irritation in the hot days, basically in summers. And also it is ideal to you can also use the perforated material, and you can take off and clean it, and again you can maintain the hygiene by cleaning with sterilizer, and you can apply it again. So this also helps to maintain the area. You can as you can open it, so the area has a breath also. So because of that it is maintained in hygiene, because in other slips you cannot open and reuse it. The thing is, this is a kind of reusable material and helpful to the individual. So further, if you see that there are certain operative treatment also. The indications for the operative treatment are the failed conservative treatment, multiple fractures and unstable fractures, multi-system injuries, radial nerve palsy after close reduction, pathological fractures, compound fractures with vascular injuries, segmental fractures, intra-articular extension into shoulder or elbow joints, bilateral humeral fractures, brachial plexus injury, or ipsilateral shoulder or forearm fractures. So that's all for the part 2 of the humerus shaft fracture. Further details I'll be also taking in the next course. So in that I'll be also talking about the distal humerus fracture, and the further methods which are used in the humerus splitting and ILN humerus, and further like self-locking expandable nails which are being tried, or any other operative procedures which I will be also be discussing with you in the next part of the course.